We got sound.
Can you hear me? Everything all right on there?
That's all right.
Good evening. Welcome to our, shall we say, 12th season. I think it's the 12th season. I'm Mike Airmont, chairman of the group. We've got some new folks and some old members. Welcome back to the old members and welcome to our new attendees. We have these talks once a month, except for August. We all took the month off. And as I usually do when we start with just going over our next three talks after tonight. On October 9th, Dr. James Andavasio is coming. Dr. Andavasio actually is now from Mercyhurst Archaeological Institute out in Erie, but taught at Pitt for a number of years. So he's going to talk about something called the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter. How many people in this room know what the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter is? Great, wonderful. How many have been there? Wonderful. Well, Dr. Andavasio is the one that did the archaeology on that. So he's going to come back and talk about it. On November 13th, we're going to have a talk about the Civil War in Pittsburgh. David Albert, who I think we met through Osher, is going to come and talk, a former Air Force Academy person. In December, the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition is going to talk about its history and then talk about current projects. Wayne Gerhold, the treasurer, will come and do that. It's not on the schedule yet, but we're going to talk in January on the August Wilson Center downtown and the development of that center. The folks who run it are going to come and talk about that. That will be on the schedule by next time. We will be just very early announcement. This year's walking tour next June will be in Chatham, which we've done a couple times, but a lot of people have not, and there's some new things there. So we just agreed that will be the walking tour. Vicki had an announcement, and then we get into our speaker.
Okay, I don't know if I can read that, but a pretty big mouth. But today I found out that I would not be allowed to vote when I went to my voting place where I've been voting for years, because I am registered as Beatrice F. Golzer at the voting bureau, but my license, my identity is Beatrice Golzer. So, I
thought that was not true.
it is true.
Because the Pennsylvania government says as long as it's close enough.
Well,
Who told you that
I
you
couldn't vote? Well, if I couldn't vote, I think they're in negotiations about it, but there will be a question when you get there. So, if you're really concerned about voting, I would either call Dan Frankel's office, our representative, and he can tell you whether it's true or not, and or not the voting elections bureau. But in this particular area where we live, 2 or 3 blocks, there's 51 people that will not be allowed to vote when they get there because they either have a nickname in the beginning or there's some discrepancy. So it's important that you call Dan Frankel's office or you call the elections office and find out whether you will be able to vote.
I think that's absolutely untrue, because I think you can do a provisional ballot.
I hope you're right, but they're going to have, one of the problems is sometimes they don't have enough, but that's a good idea. You can do a lot of other things, but I want to be sure that I can vote, so I'm re-registering exactly like my license said. Thanks a lot.
That sounds like one of the more important announcements we've had here. John Husek, who's been a long-time supporter of the Historical Society, is responsible for getting our speaker for tonight, and John is going to come up and introduce her. Where are you, John? There you are. Hold it this way, like this. Okay.
Hi, my name is John Husek. I've been with the Squirrel Hill Historical Society for several years. And a couple of years ago, what happened was that we did a talk on Homewood Cemetery. So I came up to Mike and I asked him, well, what about doing a program on Calvary Cemetery? And he says, okay, well, we go find somebody to talk about it. So that's what I did, and I went to Calvary Cemetery, and I got in touch with Chris Morrow, and she told me that she was willing to help out and tell us about the cemetery. And I did this because my family is buried in Calvary Cemetery. My mother, my dad, brother, my dad's father, and my dad's stepfather were all in there. And the people from our parish that I went to, St. Regis, a lot of their people were in there. In fact, Calvary Cemetery covers practically all of East End. And there's about 150, 60,000 people in the cemetery. It's a city in itself. It's about 240 acres. So and we finally got everything arranged with Chris, and she's going to tell us about the cemetery. And she brought Linda Ashbury and Glenn Connell to help out, to tell us about what she knows about, what everybody knows about the cemetery. And if you want to do some genealogy, like I do, this is the place to go to. Okay, so here's Chris, and she'll tell you all about Calvary Cemetery.
Thank you, John. That's mine.
Is that not enough light?
We can try. If I give you the sign, then we can everybody see first and foremost? Can everybody see first and foremost? Okay, good. All right. Good evening, everybody. As John mentioned, my name is Chris Motto, and I am from the Catholic Cemetery Association of the Diocese of Pittsburgh. I first want to thank all of you for inviting us this evening, especially John and Mike for helping to coordinate all of this. I am the Family Service Manager and Coordinator for the Catholic Cemeteries Association, and as John had mentioned, Glenn Connell is one of our trainers, and Linda Asbury is the Sales Manager. We're here to, of course, after our presentation, if you do have any questions, please, feel free to ask us. Don't hesitate to come up and chat or ask away, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you do have. I want to say it's very appropriate that we are all here, that we are asked to speak this evening on a day that has such strong memories to every American, and to discuss, some local history about an institution like Calvary, and to pay tribute to some of our local residents during this National Day of Remembrance and Service. Within the gates of Calvary Cemetery resides many of our own family, as you've mentioned, friends, historical figures, and prominent people from all of the areas of our lives and in our own American history here. Today and tonight I'm going to, go over some of those and talk about some of those famous people that are within our gates. How many of you folks, can I ask you, other than those who had already mentioned, know someone? If you're not related to someone who's buried at Calvary, how many of you folks know someone who's buried at Calvary? Okay, so probably about 70%. Most of you didn't raise your hands? I bet you do. By the end of this evening, you'll say, I know somebody who's buried at Calvary. So I'm going to start a little bit to talk a little bit about Calvary and some of the history. In 1886, the diocese established Calvary Cemetery Association and Calvary Cemetery. As John had mentioned, we have approximately 247 acres of land in the Hazelwood, Greenfield, Squirrel Hill area of Pittsburgh. I was told that we're actually in 3 zip codes, but we're actually considered Greenfield, 15207. But I guess that we're actually spread out so far that we're actually in the 3 different regions. This is actually an aerial view of the cemetery as it was developed. Kind of gives you an idea of how large it really is. A lot of people, I hear, I didn't even know that Calvary was here. Going up Hazelwood Avenue, because all you see are the 2 gates. You just do not realize how big it is until you get into the property itself. 2 years later, after 1886, on June 13, 1888, the funeral of John Albert Bowers occurred, who was the first interment in our cemetery 124 years ago. Sadly, he was only 1 month and 14 days old. The next photograph here was taken at Calvary in 1905. The gentleman in the photo is John J. Hart, who is now buried along his wife Joanna Riley Hart and her parents Ursula and John C. Riley, together in the large family lot, the Riley lot. This photo was provided to us by Betty Kingsley Henderson, who is the actual great-granddaughter of John and Joanna Hart. And as you can see here, this is actually Actually, right now, it's part of, if you go into Calvary, past where the offices and the garage are, this is the beginning of one of our sections. It's kind of like farther in the middle now, but that was like the entryway where they used to bring the, you know, the horses. And actually, I heard that he was on his way to a wedding when that photo was taken, not a funeral. Calvary remains the largest of the diocesan cemeteries and currently does approximately 800 burials a year. Today it includes the largest mausoleum under one roof in the country, Our Lady of the Rosary, as well as another indoor chapel, which is our first indoor chapel mausoleum, which was built in the early 70s. And then we have a large garden mausoleum on the property, which sits right across from our offices at the second entrance at the top of the hill. We also have the exclusive Cardinal Wright Oratory, which was, of course, named after Cardinal Wright. And it is a semi-private mausoleum. It's at the lower entrance when you come in the gates. There is also a large priest plot for the diocesan priests, which features a 20-foot bronze statue depicting Christ the High Priest. Another area nearby, called Shepherd's Rest, is a mausoleum that was set aside for the entombment of all of our bishops within the diocese. In addition to those mentioned, we also have areas for specific orders such as the Redemptorists and St. Vincent de Paul, which is the section set aside specifically for those poor folks that don't have any type of burial arrangements made or who can't, families can't provide for them. There's also a children's section, often referred to as the Angels section. This area is where the Catholic Cemeteries provides free burials to all children under the age of 2. There is also an area located in the front of the original mausoleum for those who wish to memorialize children who were lost to abortion. This feature is called Rachel Mourning. The monument is to the unborn, and it reminds us to pray for life at all stages. The central offices of the Catholic Cemetery Association are located on our premises at Calvary, and CCA was established over 60 years ago, in 1952, and now manages 16 diocesan cemeteries and provides guidance to 116 parish cemeteries within our area. So it's quite a large undertaking that we offer these services to all the cemeteries pretty much throughout the Pittsburgh area. As of now, we have over 155,000 interments and entombments that have taken place at Calvary. The average age of the deceased person buried here is only 43 years old. There are 63 developed sections, as well as areas for future development within our gates. Over the years, there have been many urban legends or myths surrounding some of the residents, famous and infamous, and their final resting places here at Calvary. Many of the neighborhood folks have heard the haunting tales of the Friday Mausoleum. How many of you have ever gone into Calvary and heard of the Friday Mausoleum? Okay. I think it was one of the hot topics on the Growing Up Greenfield Facebook page. I think it had the most responses of people who, the coming of age, you have to go out to Calvary and go stay the night at Fridays. So that was the big urban legend, that it was haunted. What's that?
We'd rather you didn't.
Yeah, we'd rather you didn't. But we know that it's occurred over the years, many generations. So Friday's Mausoleum here, many generations of local children have accepted those dares from their peers and have tried to spend time at this private mausoleum. It brought back many strange tales and some unexplained events. The feelings of cold winds on a sunny day, faint sounds on dark nights, and strange cats attracted to the building. The battered bronze doors of the building are all elements of the tales of Friday's Mausoleum. Interesting, when you look, you can't really see in that photo, but some folks say the dents appear to come from the inside. Oh, stop. You have to check it out for yourself. You be the judge. We also have 3 soldier sections, the oldest of which is decorated with an authentic Civil War shore gun, depicted here in that photo. It's one of the main focal points of many children's memories who recall coming to Calvary and visiting and playing on the cannon. So whenever somebody comes in, there's usually a couple icons. They're either near the cannon or near the Blessed Mother. So every time somebody comes in, they say, oh, it's down by the Blessed Mother, it's over by the cannon. So this is one of the icons that are located here that everyone remembers. There are also two other veterans sections throughout our cemetery. The one in the front, when you come through the lower gates, this is the one you usually see in the Post-Gazette that they take usually around the Veterans or Memorial Day. And we also have our memorial services that are there annually. And we also do tours during that weekend, so if anybody would like to come and do the actual physical tours and things like that, you're more than welcome to come during the Memorial Day weekend next year. We also have, was there another section?
No.
Oh, okay. There are also many unique stones throughout the cemetery that you can see along the way. The most recent addition is the Winged Victory of Samothrace, also known as Neo-Nike. It was created by the Catholic Cemetery Association for the Marone brothers, Phil and Nick. Actually, Glenn and I think Linda were the ones that actually assisted the family. It's one of the largest, or it is the largest one-piece, hand-carved replica ever created. The original sculpture resides, does anyone know? Very good, very good. In Paris, France. This is the earliest artistic reference to angels in the Greek culture. Often overlooked, because it blends in with the nature surroundings, is the Tree Monument, which is actually shaped like a tree. And I guarantee you, the first time you drive by, you will not notice it unless we point it out. So, and you can see just from that angle, looks just like a tree. It's really kind of neat. The legendary brides of Calvary were created in the images of the beloved women in their wedding attire, whose deaths left their men brokenhearted. These personal tributes are a true testament of their eternal love. The personal tributes and replicas were not exclusive just to the women. We even have some of the guys. Some other interesting monuments worth mentioning are the Haggerty Stone here, which depicts a geometric or mathematical puzzle. It's featured here on the front of the monument. The story I hear, I don't know if this is true, but what I hear is there was actually, Glenn, a prize by CMU at one point in time for anybody who could actually figure out this puzzle.
Yeah, I heard from two different people that there was something set up in trust if somebody can actually solve that.
So, get your pens out. A few steps away sits the Mammoth Monument, a rather unique stone which is shaped like an anchor. The McSwiggan stone that incorporates both granite and bronze is a stone that is a testament to the family who actually founded Kennywood Park, if anybody remembers the name McSwiggan. One of the most abstract monuments in the cemetery is the Descenzo lot, and it's in our section L. The intriguing monument was reported to be made in France and brought over sometime around 1968. At one time, there were 4 crystals that were embedded. You can kind of see them in some of the areas there that were embedded within the monument itself. However, they have been taken out over the years and not placed back in. The particular area in the past became one of our large family estate sections, attracted many families who were seeking to establish long-term legacies. And this is evident by the numerous displays of artistic design which adorn this section. One of my most favorites is this one here. Also not to be missed is this, as I mentioned, this beautiful bronze masterpiece of the Blessed Mother and Child. And it's a favorite of many of our visitors. What I really like about it is that it depicts, you know, the granite, and no matter when you come during the day, it's beautiful. It hits it at different times. And the patina that's on that bronze, you know, it's kind of like the patina that used to be on the Statue of Liberty before they refinished it. It's the natural oxidation, but I think it adds just more beauty to that art. So it's really neat to go look at. One of the monuments featured we also have is the Christ statue, which was created by a great Italian sculptor, Raffaello Romanelli, for the Catanzaro family in the early 1900s. This statue was actually originally commissioned by a Russian monarch who actually had it made for his collection. And when the war broke out, he was not able to complete his payment to the artist to finalize the deal. So this prize statue of the Savior was then sent to America to be showcased at the World's Fair in San Francisco. It won first prize. The Catanzaro family was visiting from Pittsburgh and learned of the availability of the sculpture and purchased it for the family estate here at Calvary for only $7,000. There's no way they would get it for today. It's beautiful. There are many other unique buildings and monuments within the gates of Calvary, so I always encourage everyone to explore our grounds and find the ones that most interest you. There's so much. And you know, I've been at Calvary for 17 years, and every time I go out into our cemetery, I see something I've never seen before. I really do, and I think we can all attest to that. There have also been many notable burials within our gates that are often sought out by many visitors. Calvary Cemetery is the resting place of 4 Pittsburgh mayors. David L. Lawrence, William, these are, well, yeah, there's a couple of David L. Lawrence. There's one of my favorites. And there's his final resting place, along with his wife. Also, William Addison McGee and Richard Caligiuri. And of course, we all know Bob O'Connor. And as you can see, the stone that we created for Mr. O'Connor, Mayor O'Connor, and his family depicts the city that he loved so much. And the butterfly is to represent him flying over the city. And he's free. And I did tell you that before we left today, you would all know someone buried at Calvary. So now I know y'all do. So as you can see on that last picture, that's okay, Glenn. The reason why you can see on the front of the stone the Celtic cross, which represents the Irish heritage of Mr. O'Connor, and of course the Star of David, which represents the Jewish heritage of Mrs. O'Connor. Along with these mayors and former governor, there's also a long list of other politicians who are buried there. I have a list for y'all after we're done here today. You can also pick that up and take a look and see if any of your favorite politicians are on that list. Along with that, we have some of the photos you can see. McCardle Roadway, we all know that. We've all driven down that one before. And moving on, we have some famous sports figures.
4 horsemen.
Who said that? Very good. 4 horsemen. Very good. Very good. Does anybody else know who the 4 horsemen are? Any sports fans? Okay. One of the famous 4 horsemen of Notre Dame was the quarterback, Harry Stalderer, who was the legendary member of those 4 horsemen of Notre Dame. He is buried here at Calvary. And as you can see here, he is memorialized by a bronze plaque. And we also have, as you can see here, anybody know who this is?
Billy Carter.
Very good. Billy Kahn, also known as the Pittsburgh Kid, who nearly went the distance with Joe Louis in 1941, despite being outweighed by 25 pounds. Harry Greb. Harry Greb, another famous local boxer, often referred to as the Pittsburgh Windmill. His official record was 106 wins, 8 losses, and 3 draws, but including newspaper decisions, brings his tally to about 260 wins in about 300 fights. It's pretty incredible. Some boxing historians consider Greb to be the greatest middleweight in history. He is also considered to be one of the 10 or 20 best lightweights of all time, despite being a natural 160-pounder. Herb Drury played in the NHL from 1925 to 1931 with the Pittsburgh Pirates and Philadelphia Quakers. Although born in Midland, Ontario, Canada, he played for the United States Olympic team and won a silver medal in 1924 in the Winter Games in France, where he led all U.S. hockey players with 22 goals in 5 games, and he was inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame in 2010. Other notable sports figures include several famous baseball players. As you see up here, a modest stone marks the grave of James Pud Galvin, who received his nickname because he used to make hitters look like pudding. Okay. He was known also as the Little Steam Engine, and he is also in the Hall of Fame as a pitcher with the first man to win 300 games in a career that began just 10 years after the Civil War. Others include Enos Kirkpatrick, who played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Bill Reagan, who was a catcher with the Red Sox, and Jimmy Smith, often referred to as Greenfield Jimmy, because he's from Greenfield, or the Blue Jacket. He also won a World Series ring for the Cincinnati Reds. Greenfield Jimmy was also the father-in-law of Billy Conn. Moose Solters, a Major League outfielder, is another buried at Calvary. Then there's Bucky Williams. Does anybody know who Bucky Williams is? Bucky Williams, born Wallace Ignatius Joseph Williams, a Negro League baseball player, and at the time of his death, he was the second oldest living Negro player behind the second oldest, behind 104-year-old Emilio Navarro. Williams was a lifetime 340 hitter. Thank you. He played third base and shortstop. He played for the Pittsburgh Crawfords. He also played from 1927 to 1932, and then he came back with the Braves in 1936. He also played earlier with a Sandlot team called the Pittsburgh Monarchs. If there's any, baseball fans, they know who those are. Williams was not only a veteran, but a member of the Red Ball Express. You know what the Red Ball Express was? The Red Ball Express was an enormous convoy system that was created by the Allied forces to supply the forward area combat units moving through Europe following the breakout from D-Day and the beaches of Normandy. Without these men and the Red Ball Express, we likely could have lost. Supplies would not have gotten to our troops. So he was a very, very important part of our American history.
What was his name again?
His name is, he's known by Bucky Williams.
Bucky Williams.
Yes. And a lot of this information I've spoken to, and I interviewed his son, who is still here in the Pittsburgh area and provided me with a lot of these photos. Okay. The first U.S. infantryman killed fighting the Germans in the trenches of World War I is pictured here. On November 3rd, 1917, in France, Private Thomas Enright from the Bloomfield area was returned to our sister cemetery at St. Mary's for burial. St. Mary's Cemetery is right there, which used to be by St. Francis, but is now Children's Hospital. Also butts up against the fence line with Allegheny Cemetery. St. Mary's has a history, a unique history of its own, interesting. We, certainly like to share with you someday, but I'd like to, explain and show people this photo because I think it's an very important part of our American history, having this gentleman buried here within our, local area. And he's also recognized, you can see some of those photos, soldiers and sailors, where his funeral was, and then his final resting place here in Pittsburgh, as well as the memorial that they have overseas for him, and the other two gentlemen that were killed at that time. Now, we also have some other interesting people that are buried here. If you take a look at this article that I had gotten out of the paper, these are two prominent brothers who died within, there are two other pair of brothers that were buried in an unmarked grave at Calvary for decades, Ed and Jack Biddle. Two death row inmates at Allegheny County Jail in 1902 were sprung by the warden's wife. Does anybody know her name? That's right, Mrs. Sofel. And of course, we all know that was played by Diane Keaton and Mel Gibson. Right. They were sprung by the warden's wife, but shot by the police as they fled in a sleigh for Canada. Now, they think we're graphic today. Did you see those photos where all the gunshot wounds were? They were pretty descriptive even back then, where everybody was shot. Mel Gibson and Matthew Modine played them in the movie in 1984, which was filmed here in Pittsburgh. And a headstone was placed on the brothers' common grave afterward by the movie production company, because they went in an unmarked grave for many, many years. I think the legend has it, they were afraid she was going to come back and try to visit the grave, so they wanted the grave unmarked. Calvary has also become the final resting place for many famous people of the arts. John Cain, August 19, 1860 to August 10, 1934, was an American painter celebrated for his skill in the naive art. He was the first self-taught American painter whose unique style paved the way for other self-taught artists. from Grandma Moses to outsider art. Today, Kane is remembered for his landscape paintings of industrial Pittsburgh, many of which are held by major museums such as the Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of American Art, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have all heard the term starving artists, often referred to many great artists while they are alive. Sadly, even in death, Mr. Kane's grave reflects the same premise as it goes unmarked after all these years. Another famous, very good, somebody knows their history, somebody knows our residents. Mary Lou Williams, May 8th, 1910 to May 28th, 1981. She was an American jazz pianist, composer, and arranger. She grew up in the East Liberty neighborhood of Pittsburgh and was one of 11 children. As a very young child, she taught herself to play the piano. Her first public performance was at the age of 6. She became a professional musician in her teens, and she began performing publicly at the age of 7, when she became known as the little piano girl of East Liberty. Williams wrote hundreds of compositions and arrangements and recorded more than 100 records. Williams wrote and arranged for such famed band leaders as Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, and she was friends and mentor and teacher to Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, and Dizzy Gillespie. Also, okay, who was he? Did I stump you? You knew the answers before. Okay, this is Norman A. Vilsack, Frauenheim. October 29th, 1897 to November 18th, 1989. He was an American pianist and music teacher, and for many decades he was acclaimed for his performances in both America and Europe. He was born in Pittsburgh, and he also is remembered by his many students for imparting his own style with his own famous teachers that he was taught by. But Frauenheim was the 5th of 7 children born to Edward and Annette Marie Vilsack Frauenheim, who are the parents and co-founders of the Pittsburgh Brewing Company. Their families were prominent in early Pittsburgh society, and their involvement in industry, banking, and other philanthropies. Frauenheim taught himself privately in New York City, and Pittsburgh, he was a music professor at Carnegie Institute of Technology, which is now CIU. Also buried here is American poet, Patricia Dobler. She lived in Pittsburgh and taught for many years at Carlow University, where she directed the Women's Creative Writing Center and the Mad Woman in the Attic writing workshops. She died July 24th, 2004, and after her death, her collected poems were published by Autumn House Press in 2005. Here's a photo of Father James Renshaw Cox from 1886 to 1951. He was an American Roman Catholic priest here from Pittsburgh, known for his pro-labor activism. He was a candidate for the President of the United States in 1932. Also, as an organizer of the unprecedented protest march in Washington, D.C. for labor rights. Does anyone recognize this gentleman? What's that?
Is that Frank Gorshin?
No, that is Gene Lyons. He starred in numerous television shows during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but he's probably best known as the commissioner on Ironsides. So I watch, my grandmother watched it all the time, so I recognize him. Now, of course, we're a little ahead of the game there.
What does it mean?
What does it all mean? Okay. One of the most sought-out burials at Calvary, of course, is Frank Gorshin. The headstone of the actor best known as the Riddler of the TV series Batman. And here in his last performance as George Burns. He did that performance here, and this is Frank is Frank. That's a rare moment. Frank was rarely Frank. He was also always someone else. But fittingly, his headstone, which I had the great honor to assist his family, his wife Christina and his son Mitchell, in creating, literally, and you probably can't see it too well, but at the very bottom, it does say, "What does it all mean?" And when we put this design together and we talked about what can we do to pay tribute to Frank, He had portrayed so many different people throughout his career, and everybody loved him for the special part that he played. Not just the Riddler, not just, George Burns. There were just so many. But the only way that we truly felt that we could pay tribute to the man was to leave it to all of your imagination. And that's why it's simply just his silhouette on stage. So you can think about what character he meant to you. And it's a very simple stone depicting him. What does it all mean? Now, legend has it, I won't tell you, that his burial vault was hand-painted by the cemetery workers. I won't tell you what color it is, and I won't tell you there's question marks on it. Okay? Now, some of the other famous icons in the cemetery include one of the, probably the biggest landmarks is the Blessed Mother statue in section 40. This landmark is used for visitors to find their loved ones. Whenever they come to the office, they always say, "She's down by the Blessed Mother." So we have a general idea where they're going. The beautiful angels that have watched over Calvary through the years, there are many of them. And if you come in through the gates, you're going to see a ton of them. They're just absolutely beautiful works of art. The most recent addition is the angel that comforts Christ the night before his crucifixion, which adorns the columbarium located in our newest section, the Garden of Gethsemane. We've developed this area to provide our families an opportunity to continue their traditions and securing their own family estate lots. Many people select Gethsemane because of its beauty and its availability. This is also the area where Mayor O'Connor was buried, just a little bit up the road from there, but he's in that new Garden of Gethsemane. So if you're ever coming to pay your respects, that's where he's at. Now moving on from the area of the cemetery itself, we're going to talk a little bit about our most recent addition, which is Our Lady of the Rosary Mausoleum, which was dedicated on July 31st, 2007. This mausoleum is, like I mentioned earlier, not only the largest building the diocese has ever built, but the largest building constructed in the entire country under one roof. Now there are larger mausoleum buildings, but they're spread out into separate units. This particular building was built on one roof. It has 3 floors. It is so large that there are over 527 caissons to help support the 26,645 tons of building materials in this mausoleum building. To help you understand how large it is, a standard house typically has 4 caissons. This building, 527. Now, there are 6,485 crypt spaces and about 656 niche spaces, which accommodate cremated remains in this particular building. Mausoleums were once thought of as an exclusive option only available to the rich and famous, but with the building of these community mausoleums, mausoleum entombment has become quite affordable compared to the cost of ordinary ground burial. And often, in most cases, it's even more affordable than it was at one time. Mausoleums have become the preferred choice of families today. 60 out of 100 property owners are now mausoleum owners or purchasers. Along with individual spaces available, there are private areas set aside for families who wish to establish their estates and their entire family in areas in these buildings. These rooms that we have in these buildings can accommodate anywhere from 2 to 48 people, depending on their needs. Other private areas can accommodate larger or smaller, depending. In each one of these rooms, as you can see, they have stained glass that depicts a part of the rosary itself, because that's what the building was named after, so it all has religious themes. In keeping with the Our Lady of the Rosary theme, there is nobody closer to Jesus himself than the Blessed Mother. So all of the works of art that are depicted here, you can see throughout the building. There are 3 genres of art, and as you can see, there are the stained glasses, the stained glass windows. We also have oil on canvas, and we have mosaics. This is actually Our Lady. This is the featured stained glass as you come into the building. And it's simply beautiful. You really can't get an idea of how much detail is in that artwork until you actually go up and take a look at it. And in her halo alone are these angels that are just etched in there. It's simply beautiful. And if you hit it at the right time of day, usually about about an hour or 2 before sunset, late in the afternoon, it's incredible. Her jewels in her her crown actually illuminate this light. Looks like a rainbow when you get up into the balcony area there. It's really, really beautiful. It's kind of a place where you can go and it's very quiet and just kind of sit back and relax and have some serenity. On the chapel floor, we also have the stained glass windows that were depicted when you were, when you were back a few, and various mysteries of light, mystery of Eucharist, mysteries of the five glorious mysteries, and then the, did you show the Donahue Chapel yet?
I
Okay.
think I was trying to get to the big one.
I just wanted to get to the Donahue. We have a benefactor, a large family, the Donahue family, that helped in assisting the development of this building, and that's what's depicted here. They have a private area that's set aside for how many people, Linda? It's about
166.
166 members of their own family,
Or more.
or more.
At least 100.
I don't think some of them have been born yet, but they wanted to make sure that they had enough spaces for everyone. So, which is a real true testament to their family, keeping their family heritage together. So, I think his parents, he had his parents moved in there, and then they're there for all his children and his 50-some grandchildren. So they're all going to be taken care of, and they'll all be kept together, which is a nice thing for them to be able to do. Where are we at, Glenn? Okay. On the terrace level, we find a mix of the sorrowful mysteries, the joyful mysteries, and the luminous mysteries throughout these corridors. There's a minor chapel with an exquisite Italian mosaic depicting the crucifixion. And then, of course, here is the oil painting of the baptism of the Lord. And the two middle corridors, there are also mosaics that depict the joyful mysteries. And again, these photos really don't show you the beauty of that artwork. It's a lost art. It truly is, these mosaics. Simply beautiful. The one that you saw, well, here, Finding in the Temple, and that crucifixion that was there earlier, were all done in Italy and then brought over here to our building. These mosaics here integrate a unique feature, unlike any other in the entire building, that will actually allow a small number of families to be entombed behind the artwork itself. So their space is actually a part of that mosaic. It's pretty interesting. So all of our buildings are also secured. They all have keypads, so you really can't get in there unless we're opening it to the public for like tours, or if you have family that is entombed in there, or you're visiting someone and have the code. But we encourage anyone that is interested in taking a closer look at the building or anything on our properties to contact us and let us know. We would be more than happy to give you your own private tour, or if you're bringing a small group with you, we'll be able to, provide you with assistance and give you some more information and show you firsthand the real beauty within the gates of Calvary Cemetery. I want to thank you all for allowing us to come tonight and speak to you a little bit about the history of Calvary itself. And here you can see there's a map, and it has a listing of where all those people that I talked about tonight are actually buried. And I have copies of them over here up against the wall that you can take. It has a listing of all those folks as well as where you can find them. If there's somebody specific, you're always welcome, like I mentioned earlier, to come up to the office and get a map for that specific person, and we'll show you where. It's kind of like AAA. We'll get you a ticket to get you out there. And we can even assist you if need be. I also have a history book that we put out a few years ago, 10 years ago actually, back in 2002. It was our 50th anniversary of the Catholic Cemeteries Association, and it has a little bit about the history of Calvary, but it also has the history of all of our diocesan cemeteries in there, how they got started and a little bit about it. So I want you guys to feel free to take copies of those if that interests you and read up on that, so it's not just merely about Calvary itself. And I think we have some other literature over there. One of our most recent endeavors into the social media is Facebook. Calvary does have a Facebook page, which I do strongly encourage all of you Facebook users to hit like. All of you who are on Facebook know what I mean. Those of you who don't, forget it. Well, you'll get it when you get it. But go hit like, and you'll be able to follow any kind of upcoming events that we may have or any kind of news that's going on. And it's also interactive, as you know, Facebook users. You can ask questions at any time. But one of the nicest features about our Facebook page is it allows us the opportunity to interact with our families. We have a Veterans Tribute album that we have It allows the families to upload or bring their photos of their loved ones who are veterans or those that served in the armed forces to us, and we upload those photos right onto our Veterans Tribute album. And you can interact and post your comments or stories about your loved ones so everyone can see them from all over the world. As well as the Veterans Tribute album on our Facebook page, we have a scrolling digital frame with all of those photos of all of those service folks that scrolls 24 hours a day, every day at our front desk. So when you walk in, you will remember. And today is one of those days. We will remember. So we do strongly believe in remembering everyone. So if you have loved ones and friends and family, I encourage you strongly, get on our Facebook page. Tell them to bring their photos in. We want to, pay respect to those men and women who fight for us every day. Okay? Anything else? We also have some pens up there. Take those. Everybody needs pens. And anything else that we have? I think we have our most recent newsletter. It talks about several of our other properties that may or may not interest you, but feel free to take whatever's up there. Okay. Thank you so much.
We have some questions.
Yes.
Do you have to be Catholic to be buried there?
You do not have to be Catholic to be buried at Catholic Cemetery. As depicted, as you saw with Mayor O'Connor, his wife Judy has every intention of being buried with him. So you can certainly be of any faith to be buried in a Catholic cemetery. Of course, loved ones that have that connection with the Catholic, they can, memorialize and display their, their faith and their, whatever it is that they want to do. We do require, some sort of religious symbol, so it doesn't matter if you're, Jewish, Muslim, doesn't matter. I mean, you can be, what's the other one that you, Buddhist. Not Muslim.
They don't want to be buried with us.
Yeah, Buddhist. Who else was there? There was something else.
There's a lot of Protestants.
Yeah, I mean, the church's position in that is that, those who are brought together in life shall not be separated in death. I mean, that's just plain and simple. So hopefully I answered that question for you. Any other questions? Yes.
Why are graveside services not held at the graveside in this part of the country?
Graveside services or chapel services, you have two options. That's decided by the family. We don't decide that. The family has their choice of either or. Doesn't make, at least in our cemeteries, it doesn't matter. However, we do see that more families have a tendency to prefer to go indoors to the chapel for a variety of reasons. One probably is the Pittsburgh area. The terrain here is can be very, very challenging depending on what time of year we're doing a burial. Also, we have older folks, and having the pallbearers try to bring a casket up a hillside 30 feet in the middle of the snow in January can be difficult. So oftentimes, families will opt to go to the chapel to have their service because, of course, it's climate controlled and there's restroom facilities, and of course, it's easier for the elderly that they come in. But it's certainly up to the family to decide where they would prefer to have their service.
Anything else?
More questions? Yes?
The public can just go in, just to wander around?
Sure, sure. I mean, it is, private property, but we have no problem with anybody from the public coming in. Certainly our gates are open from dawn to dusk. There are certain areas of our building that are certainly locked, like I mentioned with our mausoleum buildings. They all have keypad entries, and only the families that have loved ones there or own in there have that code. However, like I mentioned, we will always be more than happy to escort you down and open the building, show you, provide you with a tour, whatever else it is that you need.
Is that first photo still up there, the aerial view?
Maybe.
Well, I just wanted you to orient us to where the familiar roads are.
Absolutely. It's good seeing you. I'm sorry?
I just wanted to be oriented to where the familiar roads are and where it goes
Oh, there's
back
many
to.
new roads. If you can bring that back up, Glenn.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I think PowerPoint stopped working right at the right moment.
I see. He might not be able to get that back up. However, I have maps over here that actually show you the entire cemetery. It's probably easier to look at it from there than to orient yourself from the aerial view. Because it also has on our Calvary map that we have over there.
Go to devices and.
It has the streets also on there.
2012.
There you
And then
go.
click there. That happened,
There it is.
Next day, but they got enough understanding.
Where are the familiar roads, like Beechwood Boulevard and Hazelwood Avenue?
Yeah, I mean, on our maps, we have maps over here that actually show you where Hazelwood Avenue is, where Beechwood Boulevard is. It's easier to see on our maps over here. If you're coming in from the back, Hazelwood Avenue is up here, Browns Hill Road is down here. And we provide free refreshments throughout the weekend to our visitors, you know, because they're planting and working hard all weekend. And if you guys remember this last Memorial Day weekend, how incredibly hot it was. Okay, it was really hot. It was like 90 something. We have water, beverage, refreshments down there, hot dogs. We're going to feed all our families because they're hard working, trying to make their cemetery look beautiful. So we want to, you know, reward them for doing all that hard work. So we always have something going on. We have historical tours every day. Sometimes we have a large crowd, sometimes we have no crowd. So depending on when the groups are there, we'll be able to provide them with the same presentation that we provided you with today, as well as maybe some hands-on and more personal information and tours.
You have the, you have a website where you put that stuff, like the scheduling for that?
It's on our Facebook page.
Okay, good. Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, we don't typically post it on our Catholic Cemetery Association page because it covers all of our cemeteries. And each cemetery has their own functions and programs at different times. But our Facebook page will have the information specifically to Calvary. Yes, the question.
Do they know what the land was used for when the cemetery?
No, I don't know. I think it was farmland, and honestly, I really do, because a lot of that stuff was really undeveloped. And here's a story that I was told a long time ago. There's one side of the cemetery. If you guys go down to the waterfront, which used to all be the steel mills, if you look up from like, you know, Target or McDonald's and all that, you can see up on the hillside, you can see Calvary. I don't know if anybody ever noticed that. That hillside, where you now see stones, at one time was completely undeveloped. And at that time, back in the, I don't know, when the steel mills were up and booming, I was told that the caretakers used to plant in the springtime tulips in the shape of a cross. So in the spring, all steel workers used to come out and have their lunch, and they used to be able to look up on the hill of Calvary and see this beautiful, beautiful cross of tulips, you know, looking down on the hillside. Now, of course, that section's completely developed now, and they no longer do that, but there's all kinds of areas back there that were, back, of course, in that time, that were completely undeveloped, and they were considered farmland. But I don't know if they were parceled out or what, but when the Cemetery Association came here, they bought, or when they had Calvary, they bought the whole area, which I think was 200 square acres. Yes?
Do you know who designed it or laid it out, or so the landscape architect, or?
I do not. I'm sure it was somebody from the diocese. I have no idea. That's a good question.
Yeah,
I'll find that out.
yeah,
I
that's
don't-
random cemeteries.
Yeah, but I don't think they developed it. Yeah, the Devlins did for a long time, they were the caretakers, but I don't know, actually, it was too late to plan out and developed it. Some of those areas, you know, were developed by different people as the sections were developed. I mean, some of them, like I said, were just still farmland. Like this area here was actually in the middle of our cemetery, and all that other area was just fields. And as it continued to be needed, that property, those areas for burials, then they were developed and designed. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to some of the way that the graves are laid out. Even we are kind of baffled. We said, who did this one? Because some of them are laid out very simply. You have lots and you have rows. Then we have some that have blocks and ranges, and it's so weird. I don't know what they were doing when they designed those.
It's close, I mean, close in date to Homewood, which is, I think, the last cemetery allowed in the city limits. And it has that same kind of winding roadways with large lawns, which is called the landscape lawn plan, which was popular at that time. So that's why I asked if there was a named person.
Yeah, and I don't know. And I do know that the other part of the cemetery, which is farther down towards the lower entrance, at one time, like actually where section 40, where that big Blessed Mother statue is, a lot of that was actually developed with fill from the Squirrel Hill tunnels. So when were the Squirrel Hill tunnels built?
54.
So see, that section, it wasn't even developed until then. So there were areas, you know, as, like I said, they went on, that they were developed. And certainly with that fill coming in the 50s, that's probably when the second half of the cemetery was actually put together.
Do you collect pictures of the non-veterans and non-celebrities that are there?
I'm sorry?
Do you collect pictures and articles?
We collect photos from anybody who brings them into us. We have the famous, the infamous, doesn't matter. We celebrate everyone. So we welcome everyone to bring their photos in and share their stories. Each and every one of them, they're all important to us.
Two things. First of all, when I went on a tour once, the tour guide showed us Chestnut Ridge, like 50 miles away. You can see it from the top. And the second thing, are there Civil War soldiers buried there? Or is that before?
They're in the section, the cannon section. I think there are some in that section where the shore cannon was. And that's where they would be. But I don't know exactly where in that section. That would be something we'd have to look at. I find out, like I said to you in the very beginning, I find out new things every day. Do you know that this is off the subject of Calvary, but it's kind of in museum history, that St. Mary's, one of our sister cemeteries, I just found this out last week, that we actually have 13 of the victims from the Arsenal explosion, which is coming up, I do believe, next week. The anniversary of that next week.
The Lawrenceville Historical Society is going to have something next Sunday, and then their main meeting is on the 20th.
Yes, but I think the actual anniversary of that explosion is next week.
Yes,
The 17th, and that's when it happens, September 17th, 1862. Thank you. We have, what did I say, 12 or 13 of those victims that are buried there. Some of them were buried in a common grave, and then there were like half of them were buried in family lots. And I do believe Allegheny Cemetery got the other 50 people that actually died in that explosion. Yeah.
I wonder how you handle genealogy questions where people are looking for like a master, whoever's buried in Calvary.
I think this is Linda. We actually have a genealogist on staff. She is part-time because it is a very, very time-consuming process, especially in some of our older areas. Like we have, if you think about this, back in the 1800s, their record keeping was nothing like it is today. They literally have receipts, like 4x4 pieces of, that's the only information that was recorded. It's incredible. I don't know how they did it. And then we have these big archived books. Sometimes we have nothing more than just a name, a date, and a location. And the name has to be spelled precisely. It has to be exactly right. So don't leave off an I, don't leave off an O. If your family had a feud in the 1940s and one changed from an A to an O, it doesn't matter. It had to be how they were buried. And we have to know that. And sometimes, even with all that information, it's very, very difficult to find. So sometimes they're real easy, and we can find them. Sometimes it can take hours. So we have a genealogist that does that by request. Certainly, you know, you're all, anybody's welcome to, you know, contact and do that kind of research. And we can provide you with her name and contact information if you'd like. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thanks again so much.
Thank you very much, Chris. That's great. A couple things. Remember, next month we're going to hear about Metacroft. And I just noticed a computer thing I'd share with you. We had a computer, a Microsoft, a Dell or something that we tried to make this disk work with before some of you came in. And it wasn't working, so we got out a Mac. But if you looked at the Mac, the PowerPoint said Microsoft. I have a son who's a film editor who somehow figured out how to get a Microsoft PowerPoint into a Mac computer, and it worked. You never know what's going to happen. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next month. Enjoy the